This weekend is the weekend of the 15th, and every 15th we expect all companies to come in and pay their turnover tax and other monthly payments to government. So, and every month we've been having serious issues with regards to how many people we can handle before the 15th. In other words, the flow of folks. The area where we've been collecting monies is kind of small. Ever since the hurricane, we've had to stop using the receiver's office, and so it becomes a very busy area, and lots of folks need to stand in line for a long time. So we have got in place for this weekend that the receiver's office will be open to the general public to receive all payments on Saturday, April 14th from 9 to 1, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is to accommodate the amount of companies that try to get and bring us money. We don't think that we should make it too difficult for you to bring us money. There will be 6 cashiers working on Saturday to accommodate the public. And also, since the 15th falls on a Sunday, you will have an extension of 1 day so that you can still pay on the 16th also. So that's one announcement that I'd like to make. Secondly, I'd just like to update you on the budget 2018. This morning, we approved the budget. When I say approved, we approved it within the COM of 2018 with the latest changes that needed to be made, and it's now on its way to the Council of Advice, CFT, as well as the General Audit Chamber, and we hope that we can get all the paces that it needs to make done, so that we can get the budget approved by Parliament no later than May 1st, as promised to State Secretary Knops. So it means that we've asked all the instances that need to take a look at the budget finally to ask if they can help us expedite it so that we can meet this deadline. I'd just like to mention a couple of things on the budget. We show that our deficit has been reduced from 257 million, as we thought, to 250 million guilders, which is still a huge amount of money. So we ask that everyone do their fair share of taking a look at how we can reduce the expenditures of government. I spoke a week ago about different cost reducing measures, and I know that we had quite some responses from the community, from the unions, and from, of course, the employees of government that felt, because I said a lot of the cost reducing measures may affect the employees of government. Now I'd like to just mention that personnel costs, so the cost of personnel in the budget of 2018 is a whopping 199,885,000 guilders. It is 39, almost 40% of our total cost of government. So hence my request for us to take a look at all the expenditures that we make, and some of them will affect our employees. I know also that everybody immediately thinks, well, you know, they're going to cut my salary. And that's not the first thing on the list. I do have to mention again that the list that we made has not yet been approved totally, because we're still talking about how to go about certain things. Some items are established by law, and so we need to find ways and means of make this happen. But I'd like to mention a couple of the items that are on the list, and the first one on the list is adjust the remuneration for holders of political office, implement a temporary reduction of a percentage of salaries of the ministers. So we touch ourselves first. We talk about number 2, adjust the bridge allowance for ex-ministers. I need to tell you that we've had a lot of changes of government in the last 7 years. And every time you have a change of government, you have an amount of ministers that leave office who by law are entitled to a certain amount of money for up to 2 years, depending on how long they were in office. We've come to the conclusion that based on the amount of changes in government, this island really can't afford the bridge allowance for all the ministers, but it's set by law, so we need to take a look and see how we can approach that too. The third one on the list is adjust the travel and accommodation rules and policies for ministers and parliamentarians. So there again, how can we reduce the amount of people that travel? How can we reduce the expenses that we as ministers or parliamentarians, but we as ministers first and foremost need to show the example? And how can we reduce those expenses? Now, and I'm going to go down the list, but on the whole, if you look at all these things that we're talking about, they may not make a tremendous difference in the scheme of things when we're talking 200 million guilders shortage, but it's a start. I mentioned last time about the half-liter bottles of water. We have a half-liter bottle of water, and every time we leave half the bottle, we throw away half a liter of water. That's a waste. So if we deal with all these little items and save $1 here and save $1 there, we may make a difference ultimately. We're talking about, we've suggested also a reduction in the salaries of our parliamentarians. And again, they are our bosses basically, so there we need their approval. We have asked them to take a look at it and asked that they come back and tell us what they think. So the point I'm trying to make is that when all the employees feel of government that that they're going to be affected, it's from top to bottom. And I'd like to make another statement here. The private sector on September 7th immediately felt the impact of Hurricane Irma. And I say that because every business got affected. Every business got affected in a different way. Some were destroyed. People are out of work there. Some were half destroyed. So the people lost, half the people lost their jobs, or an arrangement was made. As you know, I come from the private sector, and the company that I was involved with before I became a minister, immediately we invited our employees at the time to come to a meeting. And we talked about how we're going to go from here, because there was so much devastation around us. And the first thing that everybody says, well, do we still have a job? Are you going to stay open? And the answer was, look, let's do this thing together. We either try to make it together with less, each of us, or we end up having to close down or to let go some people. And the offer was what we can see from our reserves and how we can go about it. We don't know how long we're going to be closed. We offer you 50% of your salary, but we can't force you. So by law, we can't reduce your salary, but we can ask you to work with us. And I was very proud that every one of the employees immediately said, sure, for us to save what we got, we need to give back something now to make sure that we can last. And so everybody went on 50% of their salary, including the managing director at the time. The business that I was in happened to be automotive related, and everybody knows that a lot of cars got damaged. So it was relatively short time when we saw business coming back and coming back faster and bigger because of the amount of damage. So the automotive industry, I think, kind of got a boost from Irma in certain cases because of the type of business it was in, just like construction companies have the same situation. But we have hotels that are still closed. We have hotels where people lost their work or went to 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. We have businesses on Front Street that were closed immediately. We have so many people in the private sector that lost their income immediately. Government workers, on the other hand, never missed a beat. Every government worker got paid every month like clockwork. And so some of these cost-reducing measures will affect government workers, but it doesn't affect their pay. They still get a pay every month. We're talking here, reduce, for instance, well, let me just go back to the parliamentarians where we talked about, we're suggesting a reduction in salary by the parliamentarians also. We're suggesting to eliminate the bridge allowance for ex-parliamentarians. There again, parliamentarians get elected for 4 years, but yet the law provides for them to get paid past the 4 years. When you put yourself up to go on a list and you hope to win, you know that you're going to win one term because you can't see the future. But why does the country, if you don't get a second term, have to pay another 6, 12, 18, 24 months of pay so that you can find something else? So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at. Again, these have not been approved. These have not been agreed on. These are suggestions that we make. We talked about that would affect possibly the employees. Freeze bonuses. There are bonuses that are offered to government employees because they work what's the word? Over and above. They do over and above work, over and above their what is expected of them. We have gratifications. We have situations where if somebody works for government for a certain amount of years, they automatically are entitled to an extra month or whatever that amount is. I don't have the amounts. So all of those things, and we're saying not eliminate them, we say freeze them. In other words, right now, when we have a shortage of cash, and that shortage of cash is going to get worse as we go down the year because the hotels are closed, the economy is not up to speed at all, the airport is still on emergency mode. All of those areas, we think that as much as possible, we need to save the liquidity we have so we can continue paying salaries at the end of each month. We talk about reducing cell phone packages, maybe changing them to prepaid. We talk about reducing office rents from third parties. We talk about limiting the waste of electricity and office supplies. Reduce the transportation expenses that we have by doing carpooling. So there are a lot of things on here that we suggest, and like I say, they have not been approved yet, but these are the ideas, and we want to make sure that our employees, and there's a lot of fantastic government employees who do their share and then some, but we need to understand that these are not normal times, ladies and gentlemen. These are tough times. Government of St. Martin costs to open the door every day approximately 40 million guilders a month. 40 million guilders a month. We need to find ways and means of reducing that, because there are two myths. One myth is government cannot go broke. That's a myth. Secondly, government can print more money. That's a myth. We cannot print more money. We have a situation where our economy is hurting, so we can't collect as much money as we would like to. So we need to do things on two sides. Try to increase our compliance, tax-paying compliance, try to increase our income to government, and at the same time decrease the expenditures. And I invite every single employee of government to come with suggestions. Help us think how we can reduce the expenses of government. Be part of the solution. Unions, I say the same thing. I know that the union came out very strong, and they're going to fight, and they're going to do this and do that. And again, that's their job. I understand that. And I accept that. And I'm willing to sit down. But come with a positive outlook. It is impossible that unions, employees, management, all together can come up with ways and means for us to reduce the expenditures of government. As Minister of Finance, that's my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Finance, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Justice and the Acting Minister of Tourism, Telecommunication, Economic Affairs, and Transport, the Honorable Cornelius de Wever, to address you. Minister.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Ms. Roche, Madam Prime Minister, fellow colleagues, press. Good morning, St. Martin. On a lighter note, Carnival is opening tonight, and I'm asking everyone to come out and enjoy tomorrow night, and enjoy themselves in a very safe and respectful way. The police will be, of course, enforcing their zero tolerance policy, as well as doing a lot of preventative work. So please, everyone, enjoy Carnival in a very safe way. As far as promoting St. Martin, I think we can all use our social media pages to show the great times of Carnival for the next few weeks. And I think, of course, that does its own marketing in its own way. Thank you very much, and enjoy the Carnival.
Thank you, Minister de Wever, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, the Honorable Emily, to address you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, fellow ministers, media. Thank you for attending. I have two brief topics I'd like to touch on. Number one, I'd like to congratulate Divi Resorts. They had their job fair recently. As Minister of Tourism, my colleague touched on in the media as well. you know, this is a positive sign. This is a sign that St. Martin is actually starting to rebound, clearly not as quickly as we would like, but it is a positive indication. And I'd like to congratulate the management and staff of Divvy. A special shout out to their new general manager, Anne-Marie Brooks. I know her well from when she was working at Oyster Bay Beach Resort. Clearly, this is a lot to do. I can see your passion in the resort already. So thank you for your hard work and for the contributions that you make to the community and to the country. The recently held job fair, we've been in touch with Divvy. They had 260 applicants apply. So these are permanent residents or Dutch passport holders that have applied, have come and attended the job fair. And in phase one, Divvy Resorts is planning on opening 87 of the 21 rooms as of May of this year. They have already selected out of the applicants an estimated 27 persons that they believe that they can hire for phase one opening in May. And this is in addition to the 71 employees who are on reduced schedules that will be seeing their working schedules returning to a more full schedule. They are planning phase two as of July of this year and anticipate hiring from within the people who have already applied additional staff. As my colleague minister reminded me, there was also a job fair recently for construction workers, which was all day yesterday, and initial reports are that they had 16 persons that attended the job fair. So we are starting to see signs of economic recovery. We are starting to see that some jobs are starting to come back to the community. The second topic I'd like to touch on, I'd like to congratulate the workers of the Princess Juliana International Airport. We took note of the newspaper ruling where 9 of the workers had gone to court, and the court ruled in their favor that the dismissals were unlawful and that the nullification of their labor contracts was unjustified. And I'd like to congratulate the workers on defending their rights and on their victory. And it kind of gives me an opportunity to touch a little bit on the role of the ministry and remind the public again, you know, it's very difficult. These are very challenging times. And it's hard. I have people that come to the office on a fairly regular basis saying, you know, look, they feel as if their rights have been trampled on, that they don't feel that their employer is treating them well, and there's clearly a dispute. And they ask, as minister, can't you come in and sort of get involved and intervene? And as much as I would love to, it is unfortunately not the role of the minister to get involved in individual disputes. It is the role of the ministry, of course, to create a harmonious working environment and to support both employers but also employees, of course. And so whenever we're asked for help and asked to intervene, our path is always the same. You know, we are looking for a healthy working relationship. Our recommendation is always mediation, dialogue, compromise. These are difficult times for everybody. And our recommendation has always been that people find a way to cooperate, talk to each other, and find a solution together. That's always been the most amicable way and probably also the most economically beneficial way. But in the event that there's a dispute that can't be resolved through dialogue or communications, there is always the legal avenue. And for example, in this case, many of the workers did receive legal aid. So in other words, government provides the financial resources for employees to contract a lawyer and have them defend their legal rights. And although it's taken a bit of time, that's exactly what has happened in this case. We've tried to help moderate the relationship. If it didn't work, there was always a freedom to go to court. The government facilitated that by giving the weaker side of the dispute the legal and financial resources to defend their rights, and in this case, you know, their rights were upheld in a court of law. So, you know, I think it's a good example of what the correct process is, and it's a good example, I think, of what the role of the ministry is as we look forward to trying to bring our workforce back online and get our economy restarted. I think it's also interesting to note, I know the media always likes statistics, the number of legal aid applicants as of for the month of November 2017, 26, December 17, 38, January of 18, 22, and February of 18, 28. And this is very much, again, the testament to the hard work that the ministry's performing, in particular the Department of Labor Affairs and Peggy Andros, the department head, and her staff. And I thank them for their hard work. It's been difficult times. You know, as staff have been dealing with their own personal recovery issues, you know, these have been very stressful times, but I do think the ministry is doing an excellent job, and I congratulate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, the Honorable Yorin Whitehead, to address you.
Good morning, Mrs. Roach. Good morning, everybody. Everybody listening to the sound of my voice. Good morning, my colleagues. I always have the tendency, of course, to focus on matters related to the recovery. I think that has been entrusted upon us and always emphasized the importance of informing the general public and also the media of the progress made on matters related to the recovery under my ministry. And therefore, first of all, I'm very happy and also very pleased that I collaborated and worked with the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport on advices that have been written and have already been signed off by the ministry for the use of the advance payment that we have received for the insurance disbursements funds to indeed begin the first emergency repairs to several schools. We've adjusted the scope of work somewhat in order to maximize the use of the funds that were allotted to us, and therefore the works and the priority works will focus on the repairs to the parameters of the schools and therefore include repairs to doors, windows, electrical work and roofing. That caused a slight delay as we therefore adjusted some of those invoices in order to reflect such and have the accurate amounts also allocated. We will distinguish two groups: funds directly transferred to subsidized schools, with then the obligation and the responsibility of those schools to report to us on a regular basis on the progress made in order to ensure the completion of the work prior to the hurricane season. Now, the process, of course, for the public schools will be slightly different because we have to ensure that we relate to matters related to the requirements of the terms of reference and the public bidding, so that will require a different type of process. So both will be addressed. First of all, and therefore the schools through an incidental additional subsidy, and the public schools will be tackled differently as well. And I look forward to conclude that advice and present it to the Council of Ministers for decision making. Second highlight that I would like to, of course, bring forward is that we will have a meeting with the insurance company that handles all related matters of insurances for the government, including the schools, including sports facilities, including cultural organizations. We've highlighted sensitivities and I therefore requested for a meeting that will be held this week Friday with those stakeholders to review possibilities to already upgrade the existing policy to avoid that, for instance, content matters of the policy are underinsured, as we, for instance, received quite some goods via the Netherlands recently, and we have to ensure that that is included in the upcoming for the upcoming season. Another highlight is that the Department of Education, in collaboration with various school boards, community stakeholders, and with the technical support from the UNICEF Netherlands, has developed a safety and emergency response guidelines for schools plan. The document is in its final stages of conclusion and to then be forwarded to my office for decision making. This plan is being established to equip schools with a framework to develop their and improve their individual safety and emergency response plans. And I've mentioned that when I started in January, to ensure that we complete a framework first in the first quarter, and that we can then also ensure that those that framework can be detailed by the individual schools, and it can also be practiced and trained through drills to ensure that teaching staff, school managers are familiar and acquainted with the plans as put on paper. Because sometimes you can say you can have it on paper, but then to really activate it and use it accordingly, that requires some additional training. So I'm very pleased with that, and I would like to also thank the Department of Education for the advances made. I would also like to thank UNICEF Netherlands for their assistance in the development of that framework. I now will, of course, take a closer look of how we can enforce the usage of such a framework, and I believe it's best to be enforced as a mechanism on the yearly availability of the subsidies. Once it can be included as a requirement, we can also then use and ensure that those schools will act accordingly in the interest of our children on island. The guidelines represent one part of the development of an emergency response policy for the educational sector, as described in the Ministry's Resilience Plan, which of course was created after Irma to ensure that the education sector will be more effectively prepared to respond to and recover from disasters and crises. The Safety and Emergency Response Plan lays out a number of quality standards and procedures for safety preparedness and emergency response within the St. Maarten schools. Each school, then in return, will be required, in addition to developing their own personalized school safety and emergency plan, will be therefore then required to set up a team, a response team, with the critical selected coordinators for contact persons, for instance. This school emergency plan will be team will be responsible for establishing a warning system in the school, creating awareness of safety within the school, and keeping updated contact lists for medical support professionals when necessary, and ensure that first aid equipment is maintained, amongst other tasks. So those type of things are a clear signal that we are taking indeed the impact of Irma last year serious, and it should translate in immediate improvements. The plan therefore is being established to foster an improved culture of safety in schools, as well as act in the first step towards the development of a larger, comprehensive school safety plan that will take into account long-term issues related to building standards of schools, disaster risk reduction education, and sustainable approaches to sector development. Now, a third update related to recovery is, I'm also very pleased with that, I must say, and that is with the help of a child safety technical expert, the Student and Support Services Division is currently engaging in a Return to Happiness training program. This started on Monday last, will last until next week, and every 2 days there's a rotation system so that indeed school managers and teachers can be exposed and participate in these trainings. It is a psychosocial recovery program for children who have experienced natural disasters, conflicts, or violence. In such situations, it is important to indeed create opportunities for children to tell their stories, express their fears, concerns, hopes, and dreams through a wide range of activities, and the teachers will be further trained to indeed support the children to these type of needs. I'm very happy that indeed SSSD accelerated with this initiative, also in partnership, and the goal of the Return to Happiness program is to create such opportunities for 5 to 12-year-old children who have indeed, as I mentioned already, experienced a natural or man-made disasters to process their experiences through a series of guided play activities for the purpose of reducing their post-disaster anxieties and beginning to re-establish their sense of joy, their sense of happiness, their sense of security and confidence in adult protection. Those are some of the highlights that were brought forward also through separate press releases. I hope to be able to join some of those workshops either this week or early next week. It is a 12-day program, and it will be implemented therefore in 3 weeks with a variety of information sessions for parents and children. And it is very much needed, as also earlier expressed and also signaled in some of the school boards and some of the schools, highlighting that they're seeing and observing some changes and challenges with the behaviors of children. And I hope that indeed through these type of trainings we are better able to equip our teachers in their responsibilities, but also inform, of course, parents in observing and participating and ensuring support for their children. A fourth activity, yes, also related to recovery, is that this past Friday, the sports department, in collaboration with the NSI, held their hashtag Sports Matter Mixer. The mixer was the culmination of a 2-day workshop held by the Department of Sports with the various sports associations on the island. And of course, I will say that attendance at both events, while okay, could have been better. It is really the hope of this ministry to emphasize the importance of sports to the community of Sint Maarten, and that it's not only in a social sense, but that we also start to think in a manner of the economic impact of a well-organized and supported sporting industry that we can have on island. Especially, of course, where sports facilities are challenged. We would like to make that pitch and continue to make that pitch that the sports industry can help with economic diversification. We did launch the official hashtag Step Up for Sports Challenge, and this awareness campaign will be ongoing throughout the rest of the year. So there will be ample opportunity for everyone, especially the business community and the private sector, to jump on board. I'm happy to indeed, and I'm pleased to extend the collaboration also with organizations in the Netherlands, such as the Ministry of Sports, the Netherlands Olympic Committee, the Johan Cruyff Foundation. We've consulted with them last week, and they've also extended their pledge and emphasized the possibilities to bring more stakeholders even on board, because of course we realize that the businesses have their own challenges. We have already received pledges from several organizations, and we thank them for their support. But of course, we would like to have that goal set, that many more will join us in the hashtag Sports Matter, hashtag Step Up for Sports campaign. Another highlight, slightly related to recovery, is that Friday last, it was my privilege to be at the premiere of the UNICEF Children's Rights Film Festival that has been in process for the last 2 months. The process included participation of more than 100 students in the age category of 9 to 13, and it is the largest children's rights film festival in the region, as organized and initiated by the Netherlands and now throughout the Caribbean through a Caribbean edition. This 6-part process included the training of teachers and school directors of afternoon and community schools on children's rights. The training of the students were held. Next, the children were able to draw their impressions of the rights that resonated most with them. After which an exhibition was held at each school, where only children were allowed to vote. The films were then scripted, directed, and produced with the input of the children, and also by the assistance of the film coach, Anderson Percival. On April 6th, last Friday, the films were premiered to an audience of over 200 adults and children. It was well attended. The final screening and decision-making took place on April 9th, and yesterday, I, along with the representatives of UNICEF, the film coach, and the project coordinator of UNICEF, surprised the winning school, Hillside Christian School, Group 8, Grade 6. These winning students will represent Sint Maarten in the regional finale, taking place on April 14th, this weekend in Curaçao. We definitely congratulate them on this amazing opportunity that they worked hard for, and we are already proud of them and know that you will represent us well in Curaçao. I'd like to take this moment to also thank the Department of Youth within this ministry to have worked hard along with the UNICEF representatives to make this event a success. Outside there are further elements of the recovery highlights that I just provided. In closing, the SSSD will be hosting two information sessions in the coming weeks to prepare students who will be pursuing their educational studies abroad. One is tonight, April 11th. It's a workshop by the SSSD. They're allocated across from the police station next to the Windward Island Bank. And this first one is at 5:30 until 6:45, entitled College University 101, the United States System. And as you can imagine, they will be going over the various procedures and requirements and expectations that are there and relevant for students that will study in the United States. On April 19th, the SSSD will be hosting another free workshop, and that is entitled Looking Beyond, Helping Your Child with Career Choices. That will take place at 6:30 until 8, and at the same SSSD office across and next to the Windward Island Bank. And this free workshop aims to provide parents of secondary schools students with tips, strategies, and resources to aid their children in researching their careers, exploring career options, and helping them to decide a career choice also helpful and needed for our socioeconomic development. We recognize that parents play a pivotal role in guiding their children in these important phases throughout their teenage lives, and we hope that it will be a helpful workshop and service as provided by the ministry. Two more things, one being very personal. It's related to the sudden passing of Earlston Thomas, president of the PTA of MPC, Swobe School Board. I had to reminisce about the way in which I got to know Earlston 4 years ago, before I started as then Secretary General of the Ministry of Education, and I actually recognized that he was part of the motivation for my mobility then, as we were both passionate about the involvement of parents in the education of their children, and emphasized the importance of education. So I hereby would like to confirm my pledge that I will extend an invitation to the National Parent Platform, and that is in memory of Earlston, who is already dearly missed, and I hope that will soften everybody's feel and emphasize the importance of parental involvement, and they can look forward therefore to receive an invitation from me, because the National Parent Platform is a formal advisory council to the Minister of Education, and we cannot underestimate and should constantly emphasize the importance of parents involved in their children's education. And then on a different type of note maybe, of course, we are entering the carnival season, and therefore in closing, I wish everyone a safe, a happy, and an incident-free carnival. And of course, a special message to the parents out there: please be involved as your children, the teenagers, participate in Carnival, observe their behavior, make sure that they set the right and positive tone, and looking forward to see you in the season the next 2-3 weeks, because I definitely will also participate in sometimes a stress reliever, as sometimes addressed by Mike. Thank you so much, and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Weitzer, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin, to address you.
Good morning to all. Unfortunately, once again, the fire on the temporary dump site has reignited. The fire department and the Ministry of Varmi were at the scene last night and even now as I speak, and are doing their utmost to extinguish this fire. The government of St. Martin will continue to monitor the effects of the smoke, and a decision will have to be taken eventually whether or not, if needed, an evacuation in the area is, whether it's necessary or not during this flare-up, the same process that we took in for the last fire. People in the immediate area are asked to keep their windows and doors closed and stay out of the smoke as much as possible. Today, I would also like to announce that a delegation of the World Bank is visiting St. Martin this week to help with the preparation of early priority projects. The World Bank delegation specifically focuses on disaster preparedness and emergency recovery projects, such as the repairs of the police station, urgent repairs of shelters and equipment for the fire department, removal of shipwrecks, and the removal of the same dump area, the debris that are there. That's just to name a few of the early recovery projects. The government of St. Martin has identified these projects so that we are prepared for the peak of the hurricane season. The next step that St. Martin has been waiting for is almost here. This Monday coming, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Ferrier, and I will travel to Washington, D.C. to witness the signing of the agreement between the Netherlands and the World Bank. This agreement will establish a trust fund, as indicated before, which will be managed by the World Bank to help St. Martin build back better and increase its resilience. As announced by State Secretary Raymond Knops of the Netherlands, the trust fund will hold a maximum amount of 470 million euros, which is about 580 million US dollars. What is important for the people of St. Martin to understand is that the funding will not all become available next week or next month or even next year. The funding will be available in tranches and only on a per project basis. Between 2018 and 2022, decisions will have to be made on which recovery and especially resilience projects will be financed by the different tranches. Difficult choices lie ahead for the government and people of St. Martin because the damage far exceeds the scope of this trust fund. As a young country, we have to make these choices wisely because we can only spend $1 once. To all of those who are saying that things are going too slow, believe me, I understand and I hear you. But the reality is that the World Bank processes need to be followed to get projects financed by the trust fund. Preparing projects under the World Bank standards is completely new for this country and is also unknown for St. Martin is also an unknown territory for the World Bank. With that being said, the cooperation with the World Bank and also the Netherlands has progressed tremendously since the appointment of this government as of January. My message to you today is an optimistic one. The trust fund is going to be established next week. The urgent funding we need will become available in the coming weeks, and we will build this country back better in the coming years. As it relates to hurricane awareness, by now we all know that June 1st marks the start date of the hurricane season, and I would like to reassure the people of St. Martin that this government is doing all that is needed and that it's in its power to prepare for the island for the upcoming season. As Prime Minister, I'm calling for residents, homeowners, schools, businesses to continue with the process of debris removal in and around your surroundings. I am hoping that the insurance companies can finalize the claims with their customers as soon as possible so that the removal of derelict buildings that pose a danger to surrounding properties can be demolished and removed. Keeping St. Martin clean and preparing for hurricane season as relates to cleanup is all of our business. And through this medium, I would like to commend all stakeholders that are involved in the Oyster Pond debris cleanup and Survey Phase 1. Your hard work has not gone unnoticed. To the hardworking persons in the districts, I encourage you to keep persevering as every little bit counts in our efforts to rebuild our community. As it relates to our ICT situation, this, of course, is not something to be proud of, but it's definitely nothing to be ashamed of either. The US government, the Dutch government have all been hacked before. And the difference is that they have the capacity to counter such. We aren't fully there yet, but we are taking all measures possible and that are needed to ensure that we place preventative measures in place. So our ICT department is diligently working to ensure that we are back up and running and are able to give the services that are needed to our general public and to within internally as well. Again, I repeat, hacking is something that is known throughout the world. What we have to do is make sure that we place preventative measures in place, and that's exactly what we are doing at this moment. I thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Romeo Marlin, for your opening remarks. If you have just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing. We now go over to the question and answer session. Hilbert Hart of St. Martin News, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Prime Minister. It has been established that a member of parliament who has been recently sworn in and is registered at the census office here actually does not live in St. Martin, but on the French side. The Electoral Council has found one candidate who took part in the elections who was actually living in Canada, I believe. That puts a bit in question the reliability of the administration at the census office. Has this come to your attention, and what are you going to do about that?
Thank you, Hilbert Harder, for your question. I will start with the reliability of the Civil Registry Department's administration. Note is taken of your question, but please note that it is the responsibility of every resident of St. Martin to ensure that they abide by the law and give that information to the Civil Registry Department. As you know that I was the former department head, and we know that it's a problem throughout the island, but then this is one of the reasons why we encourage persons when you're moving, if you're moving, to make sure that the department has the correct information. As it relates to those specific cases, I have not gotten any information on that personally as Prime Minister, but again, the civil registries, the role, the daily task of the civil registries to ensure that their data is updated, but they can only do that and exercise their possibilities by getting the assistance of the citizens and trusting that citizens will give correct information to the department when registering.
Alisa Singh of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Prime Minister, Ministers of the Council. My question is for Finance Minister Ferrier. You've outlined several cost-cutting, cost reduction methods that government is considering. Can you put a price tag to that?
That's being worked on as we speak. That's one of the reasons why it has not yet been totally approved. We're putting together a cost per item to see what the savings are going to be ultimately.
Stephen Cerulean of PJ82 radio station, you have the floor.
Mrs. Good morning. My question is directed at Mr. Finance Michael Ferrier. You said that earlier today the amended budget for 2018 was approved by the Council of Ministers. The budget as is now stands at how much?
I would have to pull up my numbers. We show a total income of 303,436,964 guilders, and a total expenditures, and this is budgeted, of course, at 500,545,551. So a shortage that shows here of 197 million, but that has been reduced now. That's what we're working on to get the final part of it. We know that 197, it's just about the 200 million that I mentioned as a shortfall. It was 257 million previously. So we're at just slightly under 200 million guilders in a deficit right now.
Lyndon Brown, BCN TV.
Good morning to all the ministers present here today and to the listening public of St. Martin. Minister of Education, UNICEF is real in St. Martin, and over the past days there have been some consultation with teachers. So far, what I understand, there is a breakdown of teachers and children. A lot of times people will speak in their houses and the street, but it's a reality that there are some breakdown of relationship where blame game. Teachers blaming children, children blaming teachers. The question is, there are teachers from all around the region and further. Has this share the St. Martin dream? Because teachers came from different culture and come to St. Martin. Sometimes they're not necessary share the lifestyle of the people of St. Martin. So now, as the Minister of Education,
this consultation with teachers and children will be long-term?
Thank you for your question. Let me try and see if I can answer it, hopefully in a satisfying manner. The question related to UNICEF's long-term participation and present, that answer is of course no. That is part of our post-Irma partnership with UNICEF, and while we are very happy that they share multiple months with us, it's a 6 months presence of 2 experts, and therefore the possibility with these engaging workshops that we mentioned, we hope to be able to strengthen capacity of school boards and school managers and teachers, and maybe indeed might be able to eliminate some of these observed risks that you mentioned, which have not been brought specifically to my attention, by the way. So that's first of all. Of course, once their program in 2018 comes to an end, we are able to evaluate and also see whether an extension is, for instance, necessary. That should always be part of a partnership and a program with each other to see if indeed that commitment could indeed be renewed. Thus far, we have seen a very positive response, and I would be sure that those experts that are here with us would share the same sentiments if there would be risks and indeed a need for UNICEF to stay on. That's one part of my answer. The other part of your considerations and your observations, I would say I would relate that to an upcoming meeting that I have with the WITU, the Windward Island Teachers Association, that's scheduled for this week. Friday. You may have noticed that I've had a variety of consultations with the WITU. I take therefore the teaching profession very serious, and I would think that my consultations would not go on a school board or per teacher level, but that I would do it on a representation level, and that is therefore the Windward Island Teachers Association. And the agenda will focus on matters and priorities related to the teaching staff, their career development, their position within the educational sector, their critical role that they have in terms of quality standards, their expectations towards their compensation. Various factors will be addressed, and I don't want to jump the gun yet. We've made certain preparations. I received advices from my cabinet staff, which will have been consulted with the ministry, and will be directed also to the president of the WITU first, and I'm sure that we are able to highlight some outcomes as of next week. Yeah, so while we enjoy UNICEF now, we do understand the important role of teachers and the manner in which we will position them in terms of risks, for instance, associated to the image of the profession, risk associated, I think that you mentioned it to us last week, potential risk of shortfall, of professional teachers. All those type of matters will be discussed on Friday. So I care to share more of the outcomes next week. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Hilbert Har, you have the floor. This is the final round of questions.
Can I just say that I have a very urgent call at 11:15, so if there's any, okay, then I would like to excuse myself and thank you very much.
Minister De Wever, already in 2016, based on figures from the Prefecture on the French side, they received then in that year already 270 asylum requests from citizens from Venezuela. Well, we all know the situation in that country. My question is, have asylum seekers come to St. Martin as well, and how will St. Martin deal with such requests?
Thank you, Mr. Had. As far as I know, no requests have come to me personally regarding asylum. I met last week as well with the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Blockard, regarding the situation in Venezuela as well. I believe the Prime Minister and other ministers Prime Ministers of Aruba and Curacao also met with him. And of course, their relationship is a lot different than St. Martin's relationship. So those have been taken into consideration. So maybe Prime Minister can elaborate on the discussions that they had down there. Thanks.
Thank you for that question as well. As indicated, the Dutch St. Martin, we do not have a amnesty or asylum law, so we don't really have, we haven't seen the kind of problems that, or challenges that perhaps maybe might be alarming to French St. Martin. We, like I stated before, that we are monitoring the situation, and in the talks with the Prime Minister of Curaçao and Aruba, of course, their challenges and their concerns were completely different than St. Martin, because they have had a long-term relationship with Venezuela, and it's good to see that from the talks that we had with Minister Bloch and his talks with Venezuela, that the relationship will be repaired. There's a possible repairment of that relationship as it relates to lifting of the blockade, and the trade can continue again. But when it comes to St. Martin per se, we haven't seen anything significant that would say that, okay, we need to be alarmed. And I heard a comment, but I'm not even sure if I should repeat that comment, but just for conversation, that, you know, since post-Irma, we aren't seeing much of that specific group in Dutch side of St. Martin, so perhaps St. Martin isn't attractive for those group of persons at this current time. But we are monitoring such, and should it become a concern, I'm sure that the Minister of Justice will do what is necessary to ensure that proper procedures are followed.
Alito?
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, on the hacking of government system on Easter Monday, has the source been found? One, is it from within St. Martin or outside of St. Martin? And has any reports been filed with the prosecutor's office? I think also, Justice Minister, if you can also chime in there a bit about the whole situation with the hacking, what has been done legally or what can be done legally?
Thank you, Alita, for that question. The source of the hacking, that is being investigated as we speak. A forensic investigation will be ongoing. At least, you know, whenever we have something like this, an investigation must be done to understand where it came from, whether it's inside, whether it's outside. But again, it's ongoing right now, so I can't really comment on it, but once we get the information, of course, we will pass it on to the public if we can. If the information can be revealed, we will.
And just to chime in a little bit, there are very limited cyber laws to begin with. That's number one. Those are issues that we'll have to deal with on a parliamentary level as well as a ministerial level. But I have also received a letter of recommendations with 10 recommendations from BTP, because they are the Bureau for Telecommunications and Post, and they are the ones that monitor these type of situations as well, and then give us a report. So they have sent their report with 10 recommendations, and that has been, as soon as I receive it, I received it by email. So as soon as I receive it officially, it will be shared with the Council of Ministers for, of course, improvements in the system as well. Thank you.
Stephen Cerulean, PJ 82.
Mr. Lee, Labor Day will be observed on May 1st. What kind of a collaboration is there between the Department of Labor, Ministry of Labor, and the unions, if any, to observe the day, Labor Day?
Sure. The collaboration would be the same as it's been, I think, for the past 2 years. I think the labor unions have put together a good program, and the ministry has basically supported that program, and I think we would do the same for this year as well.
Thank you, Minister. Lyndon Brown, BCN TV.
Minister Lee again. Has St. Martin has a criteria for labor, meaning if somebody coming from Anguilla, has it been monetary, that they should show some kind of, they want to work in St. Martin, show some kind of certificate of qualification? Has this established?
Lyndon, thank you for your question. Normally, the way it works here is, obviously, our first objective is to hire locally. So the employers would set their criteria, and they would look for somebody here in the labor market. In the event that they're looking to bring somebody from abroad, and then the criteria needs to be set, needs to be very specific in terms of what those criteria are. Those criteria then need to be registered and advertised. So the criteria actually is set by the employer in terms of, you know, what qualifications they're looking for, and then the labor office will verify that the applicant, if it's in the event it's for a work permit, the labor office would then verify whether those criteria have been met and whether the certifications are correct. And even the education department may get involved in terms of certifying diplomas to verify the authenticity.